First up, we will look at user access management. User access management involves the granting of access to users. It could be new users or it could be existing users who are being provided new access. For example, when a new employee joins a company in the stores department, a new user ID is created and granted access to the network as well as to the ERP to process goods movements. In the case of an existing employee who is working in the accounts payable section and he is promoted as a manager and transferred from one factory to the head office, his or her ERP access should be modified by removing the access at the account payable level, and a new access should be provided at the head office level. So in this way, we can see how new users are created, user access is modified as and when there is a transfer or elevation in the role of an employee. The next activity within user access management is the revocation of user access. Revocation or termination of access will be required, typically when an employee resigns or retires from the organization. So at the time of leaving of the employee, the access should be removed from the application and also from any other system, including the operating system or the domain or the network where the employee may have been provided access. All the access has to be revoked in a timely manner. Another important activity within user access management is the periodic review of user access. Periodic review involves taking a list of all the user access and their roles within the application, the operating system, and the database. That is basically all the layers of the IT environment, and looking at whether the user access is commensurate with the job responsibilities of that user. So this kind of a review is done by an independent person. Typically, the access or the data is provided by the IT team to individual business head of departments who look at the access of the employees and confirm whether the access is right or any change is required to the access. In case there are certain accesses which are not required, the same have to be revoked or removed. So periodic review of user access is more of a detective control, which generally happens once in a month or once in a quarter, or in many organizations where the user base is very large, it could happen even more often. The next important function in user access management is managing the segregation of duties and sensitive access. Again, this involves granting and modifying users access to systems which is commensurate with their job responsibilities. We have a separate session on SA/SOD in this module, where we will be looking in detail how SA and SOD are implemented in a ERP system and how, as auditors, we should look at the auditing of sensitive access and segregation of duties. Privileged user access is also a very important concept within user access management. Privileged user access, commonly also known as super user access or administrative access. Privileged user is a user who is having full or unlimited access to IT systems and applications. The privileged users may exist at all layers of the IT environment, that is, at the application layer or the database layer or the operating system layer, and even at the network layer. Now let us understand about audit logs and how it is relevant to our GITCs. An audit log or an audit trail is a historical record of events and activities that take place in an IT environment. This could happen across the application and the infrastructure which is supporting the application. Audit logs are relevant to all layers of the IT environment. In most IT systems and applications, there are features that will ensure that audit logs can be enabled. It is an optional feature in many of the systems. So as auditors, we need to ensure that this optional feature has been switched on at the time of implementation of the ERP or the particular IT system. So that is the way in which audit logs need to be enabled. In the newer system, the audit logs come default as enabled. So we need to understand which system has a default audit log enabled and which system needs an optional enable of audit log. One important feature is that audit logs, since they record all the activities or several activities that happen in the systems, the size of the audit logs can grow tremendously. And that is why storage of these audit logs and retention is a key challenge. And we need to understand how the client is able to manage the storage and retention of audit logs. It is also necessary that these audit logs, when they are stored, needs to be secured so that tampering of the audit logs does not happen. Due to the size and the volume of data which is stored inside an audit log, there could be issues with reference to the performance of the system, and it is likely to impact the operation of the ERP or the system itself. So the suggested approach is to enable audit logs only for critical activities and functions. For example, enable audit logs for the activities performed by a super user. Do not enable audit logs for activities performed by all users. We don't need a history of all the transactions in the system at all the time. We only need an audit log for the critical functions or activities. Another example where an audit log needs to be enabled is for the changes to master data or the configuration controls within the ERP. As we can see, managing the audit log smartly will ensure that the size and the storage will not become a challenge. And this is something we need to look at as how the clients or the companies manage their audit log process. Many systems, including Unix, Windows, and Oracle database and MS SQL Server database, these days provide advanced features for smartly managing the audit logs. Specific events can be enabled and recorded. We will look at an example of what are those critical events and how it can be enabled with an example. The next important concept within audit logs is the review of audit logs. Now, it is not enough to just enable the audit log and store the audit log. Somebody has to look at the audit log and identify if there are any unauthorized or exceptional activities that happen during the running of the ERP. Basically, there should be a process within the company where somebody who looks at the audit logs, and that person should be an independent person and should not be responsible for administration or maintenance of the audit log. The independent person should take a look at the logs and note any unauthorized activities or exceptional events which have taken place during a period of time. Typically, review of audit logs is done as a monthly control or maybe as a quarterly control, as may be the case. And it is dependent on company to company and the policies a company has implemented. Let us look at an example of how our audit log can be enabled. So this is a screenshot of an audit log event within a Windows system. As you can see, there are several events which can be defined. So there is a feature to enable account logon events. So whenever somebody logs into the system, that event is logged. Similarly, there are other features where the client can, depending on the risk assessment, enable those events. Here we can see the audit of privileged use. This is basically the auditing feature for a privileged user or a super user. You can see there is a option to enable the audit for system events. System event is basically the errors or any failures that happen within a system during the operation. In this example, we can see that even though there are several policies for auditing, none have been enabled in this case. So as auditors, we need to look at the specific settings and compare this with the policy of the company. The company may have a policy for defining the auditing and logging of critical events. We need to look at the policy, and the reason why the policy has not been implemented needs to be looked at. Let us look at another example. While the earlier example, this is an audit log at a Windows system, which is the operating system on which the ERP is running. Here in this case, we look at an audit log at an application level. Now in this case, we can see that the name of the audit parameter is called REC/client or rec client. Now this parameter is set to off, which means it is not enabled. So the user has to define a certain value to be enabling this audit log. This setting basically enables or disables the logging of changes to specific tables within the ERP. And we should ensure that this parameter has been set to a specific value in the user defined value. Another parameter in the same ERP is the RSAU/enable. So this is a general audit logging feature of the ERP which records all the security events pertaining to the day-to-day working of the ERP. Some of the examples could include like who are the users who are logging in, which specific functions a user has processed, and there are several other events that can be logged. However, in this case again, as we have seen, the value has been set to 0, which means the logging is not enabled. This has to be a value of 1, and then the system will start recording the auditing events. So now let us look at the other aspect of security, which is the password security. As we are all familiar, any application that we use requires a user ID and password. However, it is possible that the password can be a weak password. And in case the weak password is used in the ERP or in any other layer of the application security or the infrastructure security, then it could lead to a compromise of the systems. As we have seen, all the layers are connected and interconnected. So any breach at any one layer could result in easy access to that particular layer and also provide access to the further inner layers of the overall security framework. So password is basically a secret code, you can say, that is used in combination with the user ID to gain access to an IT system or an application. Because of the sensitive nature of password, unauthorized users, including hackers, most often target the passwords. So any hacker would like to find out your password, and if the password is weak, it is easy to crack it. Many systems provide options for enabling the configuration and increase the security of password controls, so as to prevent the compromise of the password getting cracked. We will look at an example of what are the various options which are available for securing the password within an ERP. The next important aspect of password security is the default passwords. So default passwords are basically those passwords which come packaged along with the application or the system which we have procured or the company has procured rather. All new systems, applications and network equipment which are supplied by vendors usually come with a set of user IDs and passwords. For example, if there is a Wi-Fi router you have purchased, the default ID in that Wi-Fi router would be an admin, and the password will also be an admin, or a password would be a password itself. So that ID is called a default ID. Similarly, in ERP applications also, when the ERP or the database or even the operating system is implemented, there are a set of users along with a set of well-known passwords that are supplied. The purpose of these default IDs is to facilitate easy implementation and installation of that equipment or the software. However, the risk is once the implementation is done, these passwords need to be changed. If these passwords are not changed, since the password is well known, it is very much likely that the password could be compromised easily by an unauthorized user or a hacker. We will look at an example of default passwords within a database. First, let us take a look at the example of password configuration within a ERP. So this is a live example from an ERP system. So here we can see the various parameters that are provided by the ERP vendor so that passwords can be configured to be secure. Here we can see the configuration provides the option to set up password digits. How many digits should be provided within a password? How many letters should be included? Minimum number. So it is basically the minimum password letters, means minimum number of letters or characters within a password that a user should define. What is the length? This is the most common parameter or the configuration for password. Here we can see the length has been set to 6 characters. That means a user can define a password which is not less than 6 characters in length. Then there are options for using lowercase and special cases. So these are configurations which are set up at a one time during the implementation of ERP, and once these configurations are in place, the users will be forced to follow this policy. Again, as auditors, we need to make sure that this is complying with the company policy. So company policy on passwords. In this example, we see that only one parameter has been enabled, that is the password length has been enabled, whereas all the other parameters are not enabled, which means that the password is not a complex password and easy passwords can be used by the users of the ERP. That would actually create a scenario where passwords can be guessed easily because they are very small in length. Ideally, the password length should be at least 8 characters, which is the best practice. And it should have a combination of either digits or lowercase or one special character. Now let us look at an example of default passwords which are in a system. So here we look at the example of an Oracle database. So this is an example of Oracle database where the data is stored. As we can see here, there are several user IDs which are shipped at the time of installing or implementing a database. As we know, ERP works and stores data within the database. And when you implement the database or when companies implement the database, there are several user IDs which are created. Some of them include Oracle or a DBA, DBSNMP, and the important ones are sys and system and sys. So these are the admin IDs which we need to be careful about. So we can see that for all these user IDs, the password is already defined within the system, which is the default password. This is what we call the default password. So for Oracle, the password is Oracle. For Aura DBA, the password is Aura DBA pass. And similarly, you can see the password against each of the user IDs. We need to be careful about this specific ID. So for system, the password itself is mentioned as change on install. However, if you go and see at many companies, this password will not be changed at all. So we need to be careful and sensitize the companies to make these changes. Otherwise, anyone in the market, this is freely available on internet. These passwords are freely available on internet, and in fact these passwords are also mentioned in the official documentation of Oracle. So it is very easy to know the passwords of these IDs, and some of these IDs being very critical in nature. These are the privileged IDs or the super user IDs. The password need to be changed immediately upon installation, which is also suggested by the Oracle documentation. Now you can see these are the password hashes. So the moment you get data from an Oracle database, you can compare the hash values. Even though password is not stored in this form, the password is stored as a hash value, and this hash value can be compared against the hash value of the particular company that you are auditing, and you can match that value to the corresponding English text password. So we can see how default passwords can be easily compromised and why it is important to lock those passwords or change the passwords as soon as the implementation or installation is completed. In fact, it is a good idea to lock up all the IDs which are not useful for the operation of the ERP. Similar type of passwords and users will be available in the other databases like MS SQL Server or any other database. Also, the similar type of user IDs and default passwords will be available at every operating system level, like Unix operating system, Windows operating system, and even within the application like a SAP, Oracle, PeopleSoft, or any other ERP or any other application that you may be aware of. Another important aspect is similar type of user IDs and passwords may also be available or be present within the network equipment. So as auditors, we need to cover all the layers of security and ensure that default passwords do not exist at any of the layer, because even if one layer is breached, then it provides access to the next layer. Now let us look at file system security. File system security is basically to do with the file system at the operating system level. File system is not very relevant to the application layer or even the database layer. It is more specific to the operating system layer. File system is basically the place where the files are organized and stored within the operating system. Ultimately, all the data, the programs, and everything else which is related to IT and the application reside on the operating system as files and folders. These could include critical files and critical folders. Now, what are critical files or folders? These could have application programs, data files which hold the data, backups, configuration, and user security files. User security files, for example, the SAM file in a Windows is a user security file where all the Windows user IDs and passwords are stored. So this is basically the physical storage of files and folders on the operating system. Access to the critical files and directories that contain sensitive information should be restricted to a limited number of users. Typically, these are the system administrators or the IT administrators. Now let us look at an example of how a folder or a file structure looks like in a Unix system. This is an output or a screenshot of a Unix directory or a file system. Here we see that all are files. The first character within each line is denoted by either a D or a hyphen. D stands for a directory or a folder, as we call in Windows. In Unix, it is called a directory. If there is a hyphen in the first column, it is an indicator that this is an example of a file. Then we can see who are the users who have access to the specific files or directories within this Unix file system. So here we can see on the left hand side, the user root is having the ownership of this specific directory, which is called tracker. And the user root also belongs to a group which is known as root. So here in this example, we have a group and we have in this example, all the users and the group is root itself. Now we see another example of what are the various permissions for each file or directory. So if you see, the first character indicates the directory or file. The next three characters indicate the permissions for the owner. So we can see that read is R, W stands for write, and X is for execute. So the user or the owner here has access to read and write. The next three characters mention the access permission of the group. Here the group has access to only read the specific file. In this example, we are talking about the file user-dirs.locale. The third set of characters, or the last three characters, provide permissions for the world or everyone else other than the owner and the group. So here also we can see that only read permission has been provided to everybody other than the owner and the group, and for the same file.